Shalom. First, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Racha HaKadosh. Double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone, from whom I learned this truth. Shalom to the 144,000 elect. I am Mayakala. And I asked actually this is Google AI. I asked Google AI, what are the 5 warnings that an empire is coming to an end? And it gave me the top core warning signs. It says 5 key warnings that an empire is coming to an end are economic decline, political corruption, military overextension, social division, and a loss of moral values, all of which apply to the current condition of what you call the United States of America right now. So I wanted to go through the first one, that first core warning sign, which was an economic decline. And I know I won't get through all of these, so I'm gonna do this in parts, all right, because I just want to be able to go through each section, or each of these core warning signs, and filter it through the scripture and see how it applies to this empire and show how this empire that we're currently in, which was an extension of the Roman Empire. This is just a continuation, only in a different place here in what you call America. All right, because we're seeing this country just turn, it's 250 years old, and that's the average age of an empire before it comes to an end. And we're seeing that this empire is coming to an end. We're seeing its decline. All right, just by these key core warning signs. Like I said, all 5 of these warning signs are in effect, and you can see that they apply. But I want under the core warning signs under economic decline. The first one listed is heavy taxes. So I asked Google AI what were the top 5 states with the highest overall tax burden. And let's see, I might as well go ahead and bring it up. And it says when evaluating the actual tax burden, the percentage of total personal income residents pay toward individual income, property, and sales or excise taxes, the top 5 highest tax states are Hawaii, New York, Vermont, New Mexico, and Maine, with Hawaii being the top state. Since the overall tax burden breakdown for these states is as follows, with Hawaii being at 13.3%, driven largely by high sales and excise taxes. I want to see what excise taxes are. And it says excise means a tax on specific goods, to cut out or remove something, or to delete a part of a text or film. So it functions both as a noun and a verb. All right, let's see. Under it says as a noun, it says under definition of a noun being a tax, it says an indirect tax charged by the government on the making, sale, or use of certain goods inside a country. Common examples are tax placed on alcohol, tobacco, and gasoline. All right, so that's what an excise tax is. All right, so Hawaii was top one with 13.3% high sales and excise taxes. New York, 12.3%, mostly from high income and property taxes. Third was Vermont with an 11.1% highest property tax in the nation. So Vermont has the highest property tax in the nation. All right. New Mexico is fourth at 10.75%. Says high effective property and sales / excise taxes. And Maine came in at number 5 at 10.01%. It says they have steep individual income tax rates. All right, so those are your 5 top states as far as taxes go in the United States. I'm going to go back into that original question because I wanted to look at this next category still under that same heading of economic troubles. They're saying money troubles now. It says huge debts, high taxes, and worthless money break the economy. You know what? They kind of keep changing this up every time I go in here. So if I read something a little different, it's only because I expected them to do that. And I took a picture of what the original responses were. So says the signs of economic collapse. The first one was economic trouble, which was high taxes. All right, and I just covered the high taxes, the 5 highest tax states in the United States. The next one under this same economic trouble is massive debt. All right, so I asked Google AI what the current debt is for the United States. Let me see if that question's still up here. Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and ask it again because it keeps skipping the answer.
The U.S. national debt is about $39.58 trillion. This includes debt held by the public, around $31.82 trillion, borrowed from outside sources, and intragovernmental holdings, about $7.76 trillion, owed to federal accounts. Each citizen's share is approximately $118,000.
All right, so now originally when I asked this, it says the U.S. debt is approximately 39.9 trillion. So I'm not believing that it went down, because this current war that we're involved in with Iran is costing millions, if not billions, every day. All right, so I'm inclined to believe that the total that I got when I originally asked this question is either in effect or even more. All right, so $39.9 trillion to pay down, and it's actually more than that. All right, they're just not being really honest with this response. And it says, so my next question: to pay down the debt, how much would each citizen have to pay? And they gave an answer right here, but this is the original answer. It says, in order for the debt to be paid down, each citizen would be responsible for paying $118,604. That's including children. All right, and we all know that children can't work until a certain age anyway. That's including retirees, and that's including non-taxpayers. So essentially, for this debt to go down, everybody in America will have to pay $118,604. All right, that's including children. So essentially, when you have a child, that infant is born into debt. When that infant is born and brought into this world, he's responsible for $118,604, and that's his share. That's his total. All right, that's what he's responsible for in order to be able to bring this country out of debt. All right, so he's born into slavery. All right, because he gets a social security number. All right, gets a birth certificate. And once you're issued those things, you're part of this system, and they start tracking you at this point, see what your portion is, see what your part is, to contribute to the paying off this debt. So essentially, this is a debt, seeing as how this is including each individual, including children, retirees, and non-taxpayers. This is a debt that'll never be paid off. All right, and this is why we're seeing what we're seeing right now, the decline of the dollar. In fact, this administrative regime is working in an effort to do just that, to collapse the dollar, because they know that they can't pay this thing down. All right, and with the thing that's going on right now, with the Strait of Hormuz being closed down, that's stopping the travel of tanker or oil tanker ships being able to bring oil to and fro. All right, that's stopped, and with it escalating, there's even another strait that has been closed down. All right, and I can't remember the exact name of that other strait, but I know it is closer to the southern end of Saudi Arabia, which I believe it would be Yemen. All right, so that port has also been closed down. All right, so it's even the cost of a barrel of oil is climbing. All right, the last I checked, is a barrel of oil is up to $100 per barrel. All right, and I think when this thing first initially started off, it was about at 40 or maybe 50,000 or $50 per barrel. Now it's already climbed quickly up to $100 per barrel. All right, now that's just what they're telling us it is per barrel, but actually when these tankers go to fill up, the ones who deliver the oil in the tankers, when the tankers go to the refineries to pick up this oil, when I last checked, they're paying $140 per barrel. All right, and they turn around and sell it to the people who distribute this oil. They turn around and sell it, like I said, their last cost has gotten up to be $100 per barrel. So the closer the distributors of this oil get to paying what the individuals that actually go to the refineries and fill up these oil tankers to pay, the closer that gap gets, that $100 per barrel, as opposed to the ones delivering the oil in the oil tankers they're paying $140 per barrel. The closer that gap gets, all right, meaning that the distributors of those that price goes up to the distributors. They're at $100 per barrel right now, so it's going to climb to 120, and once they get to that 140, it's going to surpass $140 of what the oil tanker, the ones driving the oil tankers, what they're paying. So once it gets close to the $140 per barrel, all right, for the distributor to pay for him to be paying that same amount or even more, that's when we're going to immediately see there's going to be our price that we pay at the pump is going to shoot up immediately. All right, and that's when there's going to be a big problem. All right, and that's where we're going to start to see that our dollar is not stretching as far as it used to. All right, because it's not going to give you as much gas that you're normally accustomed to getting for the dollar amount that you pay to fill up your tank. All right, and as the price of gas goes up and up and up, all right, we're going to start to see more surcharges on other things that we use, that we pay for, such as the delivery to of food to grocery stores, such as delivery of other products, such as the delivery of delivery drivers in places like UPS and Amazon, Federal Express. You're going to see their prices are going to go up. All right, so basically everything is going to go up. All right, as the price per barrel goes up, and that's when you're going to see this dollar fall. That's when you're going to see a big decline in the economy. All right, that's when you're going to see hyperinflation. All right, because everybody's going to try to pass on their costs to the consumer. So before I go on, since we're talking about inflation, we're talking about the debt that's incurred by every citizen in the so-called United States. All right, we're looking at the conditions that we're going to be suffering. I mean, we're already starting to see prices go up. All right, I want to go to Habakkuk chapter 1. And verse 3 says, "Why dost thou show me iniquity, and cause me to behold grievance? For spoiling and violence are before me, and there are that rise up strife and contention." All right, so what we're seeing with me mentioning the inflation that we're about to see, that's what we're suffering. We're suffering strife and contention, and I wanted to look up both those words. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go there. Before I look this up, I'm going to read Habakkuk chapter 1 verse 3, and I'm going to read that in the NLT. It says, "Must I forever see these evil deeds? Why must I watch all this misery? Wherever I look, I see destruction and violence. I am surrounded by people who love to argue and who love to fight." And that's what you're seeing right now. All right, with the beginning of this war and being well underway, as a matter of fact. All right, because for the last 14 days, the United States has been repeatedly bombing Iran. All right, so after these fake negotiations have taken place, you're seeing that we're right back to where we were at the beginning of this thing, end of February, beginning of March. All right, hasn't gotten anywhere. All right, but I wanted to take a look at this words strife and contention. All right, so the first one I'm gonna look up is strife, and it is H7379. And let's see, I believe that's pronounced Rayab. And under the biblical usage, it says strife, controversy or dispute, strife or quarrel, dispute, controversy, case at law. And that's what we're seeing under this current administration. All right, they are starting the controversy. You know, this is though they entered into a war that they didn't have to enter into. All right, they took on Israel's war. All right, and as you can see, Israel is not even, well, if you've been watching this thing and tracking it, Israel's not even really participating. Israel's focusing their efforts in another area. They're in Lebanon. All right, because they want that land. They want to take that land. All right, so that's what this current administration is doing. They're stirring up strife. They're stirring up controversy. Under the Strong's definition, it says adversary. It says a contest, adversary, to cause, chiding, contend or contention, controversy, multitude, pleading, strife, strive or suit. All right. The other word I wanted to look up is contention. It is H4066. All right, and this so this is like a synonym because it's got the similar meaning. All right, it says under the biblical uses, it says strife, contention, object of contention. Under Strong's definition, it says pretty much the same definition. It says a contest or quarrel. Brawling, contention, discord, strife. All right. So pretty much these are the synonyms to one another. All right, and that's what you're seeing. You're seeing this current administration causing a controversy. All right, and a lot of other countries are looking at this thing that's going on, and they're recognizing and seeing that America is in a war that they started, all right, that they didn't have to enter into, all right. Going on in Habakkuk, verse 4, it says, "Therefore the law is slacked, and judgment doth never go forth. For the wicked doth compass about the righteous. Therefore wrong judgment proceedeth." And that's what we're seeing going on right now, because the United States, this current administration is run by the wicked. Actually, we know that this world is run by the wicked, all right, according to Job 9:24. But this current administration has gone, like I said, and has caused a war, has started a war, all right, for something that weren't even involved in. All right, they're doing it just because Israel is asked them to back them. All right. So because it's bothering Israel, it's bothering this current administration, and they wanted to go and start this war because they thought this was going to be an easy thing that they could handle. But they're seeing now that they've bit off a little bit more than they can chew. All right. And they're used to having their way around the world because this is how they've always done. They've always gone and bullied other countries and taken them over when they don't like the leader, the leader that they select. All right, the United States wants to go in behind it and bring down a certain regime that's been legally voted in these other countries, and if it's opposing the agenda of America, America goes in, takes down that current regime that's in control, and then brings in a puppet in order for them to control that country the way they want it to. In order, and basically what they do is they set up their own puppet administration there, so that country goes along and does exactly what the United States wants them to do. All right, and they're used to being able to do this because it's always worked for them. But they're seeing right now that they've run into a country, meaning Iran, that's not going along with their wants. All right, and they're having difficulty right now having their way. So that's why they're begging to have negotiations. All right, in this back in Habakkuk chapter 1 verse 4 in the NLT, it says, "The law has become paralyzed, and there is no justice in the courts. The wicked far outnumber the righteous, so that justice has become perverted." All right, and with the United States, this administration being in control, all right, and being a dominant force, which is quickly changing. All right, that's what's always been happening. It's been unrighteous dealings. All right, it's been no righteous practice of the law. All right, they just go about dictating and doing what it is that they want to do under the guise of democracy, when actually we're seeing more and more every day, and especially in the United States, you're seeing more and more of your Constitution being violated. All right, and Salakia for me going so long on this. Like I said, I'm not going to try to cover all these points, but I just wanted to at least get over this, cover this first core point, all right, which is economic struggles. So I just have a couple verses that I wanted to bring out, and then I'm going to end this, and we'll continue this on another part. All right. Going over to Nahum chapter 1 verse 2. And it says, Nahum chapter 1 verse 2 says, "The Most High is jealous, and the Lord Yahweh revengeth. The Lord Yahweh revengeth, and is furious. The Lord Yahweh will take vengeance on his adversaries, and he reserveth wrath for his enemies." All right, because although we're seeing this current administration in the United States continuing to try to bully these other countries and trying to have their way, and it seems like they're having their way, all right, but in all actuality they're being set up, all right, because we're seeing the decline in this country, and we're seeing for the first time this country run into another country, and this country, Iran, doesn't even have a major military, all right. It's just that they have weapons, and they know how to use these weapons, and they're not just gonna back down, all right. And they know that they have the advantage because the United States can't come in with ground troops and just have their way with them, all right. They have a difficult terrain to navigate, all right, which gives the Iranians the advantage in their homeland. So basically, what the only thing the United States military can do is stick to their air attack. All right, and it's looking like more and more like this administration in America is going to try to go in with ground troops, which is going to really bring about their demise. All right, that we're going to see that further on in the future, because, and this is just me speaking as a man, I haven't heard anything yet, but I believe that there's going to be a draft, and I think we're getting very close to that. There's going to be a draft because I think they're going to attempt to try to go ahead and put troops on the ground in Iran, which is really going to bring about their demise, because they're going to find out that they have no place to be able to execute and drop off their ground troops. As soon as they get their troops, they attempt to let them off these planes and try to attempt to go into an island, they're going to find out that they're going to be in trouble. All right, but because they're actually going to be setting themselves up, because as soon as you start trying to let troops come off of a helicopter or any other military aircraft, you're pretty much setting them up to be destroyed. All right, and I believe that Iran is okay with them getting on this island, and once they get on that island, they're going to be pretty much set up. All right, because then they're going to be subject to exactly what Iran wants. Iran wants them to have troops on the ground. They've been waiting for this thing. They've been setting this thing up. All right, so really they're going to find themselves in a trick bag. All right, so this is what we're witnessing is the Lord Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai allowing this place, Iran, which really has no real military. All right, they just have militias that are there that are willing to fight for their country and fight against America and not give up, just like they did with Iraq. They fought, I believe, a war of more than 4 years. It might have been close to 7. All right, with Iraq, and that with Iraq being backed and being given chemical weapons by the United States. All right, so they are used to this type of thing, and they're ready to go as long as they have to go. All right, as you can see, the United States has been bombing this country, but you're finding that Iran is still able to let off drones and let off missiles. All right, that just shows you that the United States military, this regime, all right, is lying with the information that they're giving you. All right, because if they were destroying, if they've destroyed their military, destroyed all their weapons, why is it that Iran is still able to let off missiles to these surrounding Gulf states? All right, taking out United States military installations in the surrounding Gulf states. Why? And it's not being reported, but that's what's taking place. All right, those members of the military, United States military, that are in these Gulf states on these bases have pretty much retreated. All right, those bases are useless right now, and they don't even have personnel on them. All right, but this is not being told to you in this media. All right, but I'm gonna go on and try to finish this up, because I see I'm getting close to 50 minutes, and I wanted to do this a little bit less, but let the words of the Lord come out. So, Salakia. And just looking at this, and I'm going to read it again because I want to read it in the NLT. It says, Nahum chapter 1 verse 2. It says, the Lord is a jealous power filled with vengeance and rage. He takes revenge on all who oppose him and continues to rage against his enemies. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the United States being brought down. We're seeing the United States military really in a bad position right now, because the leaders, the ones in positions of authority in this current administration, are enemies. All right, these are enemies of the Lord, Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai. All right, these are enemies. All right, because you know, of course, who's at the top of this thing. All right, but for the most part, this military, the top generals and the top colonels in this thing are, for the most part, Edomites who coming up with war plans and coming up short because they're not, everything that they think is going to work is not working for them. The only thing they can do is, like I said, keep dropping bombs. And what are they dropping bombs on at this point? All right, they're causing nothing but controversy and strife, because what they're trying to do now, instead of being able to bomb military targets, they don't have anything left to target because they've already bombed them. All right, so now what they're doing is going against the Geneva Code Convention. They're going against the rules of engagement for war. All right, because they're bombing things like desalination plants. All right, so essentially that's water. All right, so they're causing problems with water supply. All right, they're taking out other civilian targets when they should be targeting military targets and not civilians. All right, so that's what it shows. All right, that these enemies of the Lord, for the most part, the white man, Esau, Edom. All right, he's causing strife and causing contention because he's frustrated and doesn't know what to do. These enemies that you can read about in Psalms chapter 83, I'm going to go there real quick. Now, I'm not going to even read off all of the enemies, but just to show that the Lord does have enemies. He has those that he hates. All right, Esau, Edom being that first one, the very first one that's named here in Psalms 83. But I'm going to start at Psalms 83 and verse 1. Psalms 83 verse 1, it says, "Keep not thou silence, O Most High. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O Most High. Since for lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head." All right, and that's what we're seeing is going on right now, because even though this is talking about the tumult and that and how all the heathen nations has conspired against Yasharallah, all right, in order to erase them and in order to tell in an effort to have them forget who they are and erase who they are. All right, that's what we're seeing is going on right now, because when you mess with the Israelites, you're messing with the Most High's people. All right, so these people who are perpetrating this thing are enemies of the Most High. These are the enemies of Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai, because of what they're doing to Yahweh's people. All right, it says, "They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against the hidden ones." All right, and those hidden ones, as I mentioned, are the Israelites. All right. And just like it says in Baruch chapter 2 verse 30, show who those hidden ones are. And Salakia, I don't have the Apocrypha on that phone, so I can't show what I'm reading, but I'm going to go to in the Apocrypha chapter 2 verse 30 says, I'm going to start at verse 29. Baruch chapter 2 and verse 29, it says, "If ye will not hear my voice, surely this very great multitude shall be turned into a small number among the nations, where I will scatter them." And that's what you've seen. You've seen the nation of Yasharallah, meaning the Israelites, being scattered throughout the four corners of the world. All right, and we are currently with that scattering, part of that scattering, what took place was the North Atlantic slave trade, all right, which brought a lot of Israelites, Hebrew Israelites, here to America. This is where we are right now, all right, and we are the Lord's people, all right. So we recognizing and knowing that we're the Lord's people, all right, and we are they are our enemies, because it names them right here in Psalms 83 and verse 1. It's like a minute to go. It's meant to go there. But continuing on in Baruch chapter 2 and verse 30, it says, "For I knew that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people. But in the land of their captivities they shall remember themselves." And that's what's taking place right now. All right. The Israelites are here in this land, you know, what they call the United States, and as it is showing you, all right, we're remembering ourselves, and we're remembering that this tumult took place amongst these heathen nations, where they, in an effort to try to forget and erase who we are, but we found this truth has come back out, all right, with it being brought back by the new song sung by Abba Bivens, all right, starting in Harlem, New York, all right, in 1969, all right. So we are recognizing that we are yet this day still in captivity, all right. And with this captivity, that means we have oppressors, so those are enemies of the nation of Yasharallah, all right. All right, and with us being the Yahweh's people, all right, we're the Lord's people, all right. Those are His enemies, all right, because they have put us in captivity and have gone overboard, all right. Even though this is how the Lord designed this to be, all right. Esau Edom has taken it too far and has gone overboard, all right. And with these things that we're seeing taking place right now, it's not just Yasharallah, the Israelites that are feeling the brunt of this thing, all right. Anyone that's not an elite, that's not in the billionaire club, that's not in that 1%, all right, is suffering, all right. All in an effort to make sure that this kingdom that's to come doesn't come out, all right. That's just what they're trying to prevent from happening, because these elites, they know the scripture, and they know what's written, and they know what's to be. That's why they have bunkers and all these things that they have, because they think they're going to be able to escape, all right. But I just wanted to bring that out just to show, all right, that we are still in captivity. These are our captors, all right, and they are seeking to try to continue the hegemony that they have had around the world. But this kingdom is falling, all right, and this thing is beginning to show itself. They don't have the capabilities, they don't have the power, all right. The Lord is allowing this thing to take place because that third woe has begun, all right. And I'm not going to bring out much more of this. Let's see. Yeah, I've gone too far. Well, I'm not going to say I've gone too far, but it's gone a little bit longer than I intended for this to go. But I'm just going to bring out one more verse under Nahum chapter 1, verse 3 says, "The Lord Yahweh is slow to anger and great in power, and will not at all acquit the wicked. The Lord Yahweh hath His way in the whirlwind and in the storm." All right. "And the clouds are the dust of His feet." All right, and even though it's looking like Esau Edom is going to be able to stir up this thing and have this war, and he thinks he's going to come out victorious, ultimately, that's not the way it's going to go down. All right, they're going to suffer a great defeat. All right, because when all the nations are gathered in the Levant, all right. This is what you call the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is really Yahweh's Shabbat, Yahweh's judgment. That's what's about to take place here. All right, He just wants to gather all these militaries and gather all these armies, and that's when he's going to come down in whirlwind with his chariot, all right? And that's when he's going to destroy these armies. He just wants to gather them all together, all right? That's what's beginnings. That's what we're seeing beginning to take place here, all right? But Salakia for going as long as I did, but I wanted to make sure that I at least covered this first core sign that this nation, that this country, all right, is on the decline and is beginning to fall, all right? And but like I said, I don't know how many parts this will take, but I'm just going to go ahead and I want to cover each of these 5 core parts of a nation's decline, signs of a nation's decline, all right? So we've covered that first one, that economic decline that's taking place here in America, all right? So I'm going to leave it there, and I pray that you've been edified by the listener has been edified by this, all right? I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Ruach HaKodesh. Shalom.